There is a painting of me by Helen hanging on my wall, a painting I love. It's one of many paintings Helen has done of me over the years. It's one of the earliest ones. What's strange about it is that Helen didn't plan on it being a portrait. She was just painting a man. I was there, so I posed for it. But it is a portrait of me. The fact that Helen wasn't trying to portray me, just to paint a young man, let her capture me so simply in some strange way, at least to my mind. I look lost somehow, but not worried about being lost. Lost and there at the same time. And in my eyes, I think that I am looking at myself. Helen really got my mouth, I think, if I dare speak of my own mouth. There's something sad about my mouth, serious and sad, I guess, vulnerable, but also hopeful. These are just words. It's hard to say what Helen got in a few simple strokes in that mouth she painted so long ago, that mouth of mine. I am naked. I think I am about 22 years old. I am standing there full length, naked, and Helen really got my feet, my big bony feet. Helen always did great portraits of my feet. I am standing on the sand, and in the distance is a strip of sea. I am standing lost on the shore. That's how I've always felt about myself. I am the young man in that painting, half in love with sorrow, that young man who is still a boy lost on the shore. And when I am alone with myself, at my most serious, my truest, when I am alone with my musing self, I am that young man still. He is who I am when I write. I hope I am him still. So I will go back to him now to write what I can hardly say. I am thinking of my love of men. I probably wasn't thinking of anything when I posed for that painting, but if I was, if I thought as I thought when I was alone, when I was my most secret self, I thought of love. I was 22. I wanted to write, but I didn't know what. When I was 16, I'd written some lines I liked. It is night, and I am tired, and my hands make knots on the arms of chairs. I liked that. I thought that meant I could be a poet. And I had written other things. There is a poem called Prince Lear's Playground. I could swear I wrote it before I left Savannah when I was 18, and that I brought it with me to Paris, typed. I could swear I carried it with me to Paris when Helen and I ran away together. I could swear I had it then, already typed up, and kept it with me and treasured it. I know I had that poem when I posed for Helen for that painting in New York when I was 22. It was a farewell to childhood, I think. At 22, I didn't know what I would write. I thought of love. For me, love was sorrow, because it was my love of men, a love that seemed to me impossible. But I believed in impossible love. I was in love, in love with my desire. I didn't know what I would write. I was 22. I was starting out. So I write a great deal about my wanderings in Prospect Park. I love to go there. And I'll read a few things about Prospect Park tonight. This one is from last summer. It's called Ice Cold Water. The man selling water by the entrance to the park at Grand Army Plaza. He's a black man with an island accent, a Caribbean accent of some kind. I like his voice. He's about my age, so getting on in years. He cries, ice cold water, ice cold water. And sometimes he cries, ice cold water, nice and cold. It's good for the young, it's good for the old. And sometimes he cries, ice cold water, nice and cool, make you feel like a mother's children in the pool. I like that. I would love to feel like a mother's children in the pool. Water, water, nice and clean, make you feel like a brand new machine. Sometimes he cries, ice cold water, Gatorade. He hasn't chanted any rhymes about Gatorade yet that I could hear. He chanted some things I couldn't make out. I'll have to sit closer to him next time. Last week, I got a bottle of water from him. I was too shy to get water today. I love the way light falls across Flatbush Avenue in the late afternoon. The light is beautiful when the sun gets low over the park, and gold light rolls across. The vast expanse of open space by the entrance to the park is like a bowling alley made for golden light to roll across and knock things down in the distance. Except it doesn't knock things down. The trees across the way, the old clock tower on Flatbush Avenue, rise up gold and glorious against the sky, and the light goes rolling beyond them into the unknown distance. It's a beautiful thing to sit here and watch the light roll away, especially this summer evening, to watch the gold light roll away over Flatbush. So, when the lockdown started, I got scared to go to Brooklyn because I was scared to take the subway. So I would, walk down and sit by the East River and look across at Brooklyn. And I thought a lot about Brooklyn and about the Brooklyn Public Library, the central branch there, which I love to go to, but I couldn't go to for a long time. So I wrote this about the Brooklyn Public Library. It's called The Man in the Library. The Brooklyn Public Library is a home for lost souls. I wonder where they are now. I used to go there all the time, and I'm a lost soul. There's a man there in the library. I can't stop thinking of him. He would sit there in the lobby on one of those tall chairs beside the counter that runs all round the curve in the lobby wall. When I first saw him, I was sitting at the counter getting ready to eat my lunch. They let you eat there in the lobby. Then I saw him sitting there beside me. When I first saw him, I thought, there is a stillness to him. I couldn't see his face. I saw one of his hands. It was a beautiful hand, the hand of a black man, the hand of a beautiful man, I thought. And he had a stillness to him, as though he were a tree sitting there thinking. His neck was strangely craned towards his left side, as though he were pressing his face up against a wall. And I thought, that's the bend in the trunk of a tree. I went to pee, and when I came back, I saw his face. He had a still, stoic, dreaming face, like the face of a tree, and a gray beard. I went and sat back down beside him. He didn't notice me. I unpacked my lunch as quietly as possible, and he began to move slowly. He had a duffel bag beside him on the floor. Slowly he bent down, and with one beautiful tree hand, he fumbled open the duffel bag and drew out a metal bowl and a metal knife and metal fork, and a can of tuna, and a jar of mayonnaise, and a package of Sunbeam white bread, and a can opener, and he made himself a meal. And I, beside him, where he looked away as he did not wish to look at others, ate my lunch and grew enchanted by him and his slow, silent, tree-like presence, yet distance. And then I left and went to Prospect Park. And after that, I began to see him almost every day in the library, and if I didn't see him, I missed him terribly, and I would think, well, he must be sitting in some other part of the library. One night, when the library closed, I was walking up Eastern Parkway on my route round the botanical gardens to get the train back home. I saw him there in the rain. He was dragging his duffel bag. He had it in an old grocery cart. The cart had only 2 wheels, so he was dragging the cart tilted up just on those 2 wheels in a most ingenious way, dragging it by a rope. He seemed very at home in the rain. As he was walking very slowly, I had no choice but to overtake him. I walked by him without looking at him, but when I got in front of the Brooklyn Museum, where there is a construction site by the entrance to the subway, I looked back. He had vanished into the shadows somehow. A few nights later, I was seeking shelter in the McDonald's on Empire Boulevard by the Flatbush Avenue entrance to the park. That McDonald's is another refuge for lost souls. As I sat there, I thought of him and I wrote this little poem. It's called The Man in the Library. It's raining outside. I'm in the McDonald's. I wonder where that man is who sits in the library, who sits in the library like a tree. Where did he go in the rain? Did he go with his duffel bag up Eastern Parkway, round the curve in the road to the Brooklyn Museum? Is he there, pressed up against a wall in the rain? Perhaps he went down into the subway and is down there somewhere. I wish he were still by the museum, pressed up against a wall in the rain, dreaming like a tree. I still wonder where he went. I wonder where he is now. And as I sit here writing this, I look up, and there is one of my mother's paintings hanging on the wall. One of the last paintings Mother did before we all 3 left Savannah for good. It's one of my favorite of Mother's paintings. It's of an old wooden house with a gnarled tree rising beside it. All round rise tangles of what look like overgrown brambles. Beside the house is an old wooden wall. There's a mysterious figure on the porch of the house, and in front of the house is a man walking by. He's walking away. He's mysterious, seen from the back, walking away. He's wearing an overcoat and carrying a satchel under one arm. And I think, gosh, he's that man in the library. He's that man. I've loved that man in that painting all my life. He's in lots of Mother's paintings, walking away. And then I think, gosh, I'm that man too. I've grown up to be that man. I'm that man who's always walking away. So this is from last spring. It's called In the St. Luke's Garden. St. Luke's Church is this beautiful church on Hudson Street in the West Village that has a garden beside it. I'm in the St. Luke's Garden. The afternoon is quiet. Hushed voices of two young men sitting on a bench, touching one another from time to time. Slow touches of affection, slow, comforting touches of love. Hushed voices of birds, my own silence. I might have been sitting here since I was 17, dreaming of love and not gone home. I know that's not true. 47 years have not been one afternoon, but they might as well have been. So little have I lived, or dared, or loved, and I can't go home now. Mother and Helen are not there in that house in Savannah, and it's much further away than 1,000 miles, that house. 47 years ago, one long, hushed summer afternoon, the lovers are gone, the two young men, and I am still here, sitting in the garden. This next one is also about Prospect Park. It's called the Concert Grove. There's a place in the park called the Concert Grove where I love to go and sit sometimes. And I wrote this for some reason as a reminiscence, so it's in the past. I guess it was when I wasn't able to go to the park. There was a place in Prospect Park with busts of great composers, of Beethoven and Mozart. I would sit there. I loved it there because there was much underbrush behind the bust of Mozart where you could pee. There were huge sycamore trees, and almost no one came there, and I could sit there for hours. I would try to write, or just be happy sitting there. And Beethoven frowned and looked very forbidding, and Mozart, behind whom almost everybody peed, looked so happy. And the trees grew, and it was the concert grove. And I would sit there and try to write. And if I left there, it would be to go into even darker parts of the park, more dangerous, more beautifully abandoned. There were trees there I loved. Oh, how I loved the trees. Oh, how in love with life I was, and knew nothing. And this is another Prospect Park piece of writing from this spring, well, this autumn, I guess. It's called Unknown Brooklyn. There's a new entrance to the park. They've made a new entrance to Prospect Park where there never was one before. It's about halfway down the Flatbush Avenue side, the long stretch of Flatbush between the park and the botanical gardens. This entrance was not designed by Frederick Law Olmsted. For a long time, I was suspicious of it. I didn't set foot inside it. All this spring, I didn't set foot inside it, except a few times before it was finished, when there were still bulldozers there. I walked a little ways in over the gouged up earth, but then I grew frightened of trespassing and turned back. And then one day this summer, not long ago, I walked into the new entrance. I walked a little way in and sat down on a bench, and I realized that from there, looking back across Flatbush Avenue, I saw a stretch of sky I had never seen before, a stretch of sky I had never been able to see, stretching away over the botanical gardens, stretching away over Brooklyn. The sky goes off over unknown Brooklyn. The sky goes away over the trees into unknown Brooklyn. The sky goes away like it did when I was 17, when I was just setting forth. Yes, I'm wandering still, and I look at the sky that goes away over Brooklyn. Unknown lies Brooklyn. Away under sky goes Brooklyn. Away where the sky goes. So I'll just read a few more. This next one, I just wrote a week ago. It's called Mother's Playboy. As a child, 13 years old, sitting in the upstairs bedroom on 36th Street, on Mother's cot, looking at her Playboy, the afternoon eternal out the window, the trees curved from time out of the sky, and I would imagine photographs that were not there. The young woman, the stripper, struggling with her fellow belly dancers, her attackers, her hands helpless as they held her down and tore the jeweled tassels from her breasts, revealing her nipples. All my dreaming of a man embodied there in her breasts, dreaming of a man's touch. A blue jay shriek erupted from the sky. Pearls to adorn her breasts were torn from my manhood. So a few years ago, I did a whole show about Prospect Park. It was called In the Park. And I thought I'd read an excerpt from that, a brief excerpt. It's, I guess I would call this the street sweeper. While wandering in the park the other day, I saw a man I might have been. The only thing I ever imagined being when I grew up was a street sweeper, a sidewalk sweeper. That's what I would have called that man I saw today, one of those men who wander about in parks with a broom and a canvas bag strapped across his shoulder and a long wooden pole with a steel prong at one end for spearing trash. I imagined wandering about all day among the trees in the parks of some city I had grown up to inhabit, the city of my future solitude. In the parks of that city, among the trees, I would wander all day long, spearing trash, spearing paper bags and paper cups, and dropping them into the canvas bag that dangled from my side. And when the bag grew heavy, I would empty it into one of the trash cans that stood patiently beside benches, that stood as patiently as trees beside benches. Almost like a collector of autumn leaves, along the cracked paths of sidewalks that meandered aimlessly among pigeons and roots and puddles, among spring and roots and rain, I would wander, always content. This was the only thing I ever dreamt of being, a street sweeper, a trash man in the park, in the city of my future solitude. And never did I imagine that night would fall, or bitter cold would come to drive me from that park. And never did I imagine going home from my street sweeping job to a house or a room or a bed. Never did I imagine that the day would end in which I wandered in the park of my solitude. How old was I when I imagined this? I don't remember. I think I was maybe 16 or 17. This was the only job I ever imagined having, the closest I ever came to imagining myself as a man. So, maybe I'll stop soon. I'll read something called Turtles Deep. I am a turtle, though I don't know where they go in the winter, to the bottom of the icy pond, I guess. There in Turtles Deep sleeps a turtle who is me. I am a turtle in Turtles Deep. In Turtles Deep, there is a turtle such as I. He is very graceful and floats and navigates the muck as though he had been these many years, this lost thing I saw long ago. I remember him from having longed for him in my childhood. I remember longing in a corner. I remember longing everywhere in my life, everywhere. Turtles deep, everywhere. Turtles deep. I'll read two more. This next one is from a number of years ago. So I'm not trying to lie about my age. And it's also called In the Park. Will I be murdered in the park? The black ripples squirming on the lake tell me that tonight someone will dare to kill me. Will he be a black boy, suddenly beautiful with a knife, or a white boy with a face as solitary as the moon? Let him be beautiful and alone, my killer, come with swift blows of the knife. I am come to a lost road in the woods, a road lost in the depths of the park at dusk, lost in the depths of my 47th autumn. I am alone on a road as gray as the sky it curves beneath. Wind sighs like sea among the boughs. Shadows hasten through the trees. The place is lost where I would go. Gray sky and gray road, I am come for this. And this last one is just called Spring Poem. I went out onto the bridge over the lagoon and looked down into the water, down at the sky reflected in the water. And first I saw a bubble, and then a mouth, and then two paws and a shell, and there was a turtle. So, well, thank you all so much for being here.